and thank you both for your service.
They're great.
During the last Congress, and again this past January, I introduced the Restricting First Use of Nuclear Weapons Act with Representative Ted Lieu. This bill would ensure that no president can launch a first-use nuclear attack against any target anywhere without a declaration of war from Congress. Under existing laws, the president possesses unilateral authority to use a first-use nuclear strike on anyone, anywhere around the world, even in the absence of a nuclear attack against us or our allies. There is no question that since the dawn of the nuclear age, it has been essential for the president to have clear authority to respond to nuclear attacks on the United States, our forces, or our allies. But in my view, no one person should have the power to launch a first-use nuclear strike without congressional approval. Under Article 2 of the Constitution, the president has authority to repel sudden attacks as soon as our military and intelligence agencies inform him of such an attack. Nothing in our bill changes the president's authority to use nuclear weapons against anyone who is carrying out a nuclear attack on the United States, our territories, or our allies. What we do propose is a common sense step to check any president's authority to launch a first-use nuclear strike by prohibiting such a strike unless explicitly authorized by a congressional declaration of war. Since the dawn of the nuclear age 7 decades ago, we have been relying upon cooler heads and strategic doctrine to forestall the unthinkable, but too often those kind of ad hoc measures seem less reassuring than ever. Do you think, Secretary Mattis, that the president has the authority to launch a first-use nuclear strike without congressional approval?
Senator, first, I would not say it's ad hoc. It's extremely rigorous, the discussions and the step-through process for decision-making. And I just prefer not to talk about a hypothetical that we have never confronted since we basically, in the post-World War II time to today, we've never had something like that come up.
Do you contemplate a circumstance within which the President of the United States could launch nuclear weapons against another country where that country has not launched nuclear weapons against us?
If we saw they were preparing to do so and it was imminent, I could imagine it. It's not the only tool in the toolkit to try to address something like that. But I believe that congressional oversight does not equate to operational control. I think that we have to keep trust, keep faith in the system that we have that has proven effective now for decades.
Well, again, we're in a circumstance now where the president talks, at least elliptically, to preventative war. Which would mean the United States launching nuclear weapons, potentially, against North Korea, as we did in Iraq, that is not nuclear weapons, but starting a war in order to disarm Saddam of nuclear weapons. That was at least the ostensible justification that Dick Cheney gave 2 days before the war began. So, in your opinion, is there a circumstance under which we would be able to use nuclear weapons if we had not been attacked with them?
The question again, please, Senator.
Again, I'm coming back to this question of whether or not there is a scenario under which a first strike using nuclear weapons could, in fact, be used by the President of the United States without consulting any member of the United States Congress, much less the entire Congress in its entirety.
Senator, again, it's a hypothetical. I think that if there was an imminent strike and it was the only way to stop it, and I'm not saying that would happen, there may be different tools, conventional tools to stop it, but he has a responsibility to protect the country.
Well, I think it's too important a subject for the United States Congress not to be informed as to what the circumstances are under which we would use nuclear weapons first. I think that it's imperative for you and Secretary of State and others, if necessary, to give us the classified briefing as to what those circumstances might be, as to when you think they would have to be used. They could be used without ever consulting the Congress at all. Would you be willing to come up and to give us a classified briefing on when you think a first use of nuclear weapons is appropriate when we have not been attacked?
Senator, I have a record of never being reluctant to come up and speak. Some hearings are best in closed session, but I am often reluctant to speak to hypotheticals, but I can certainly go partway down that road in terms of what might occasion something like that, like an imminent attack, yes.
Well, in my opinion, no human being should have the authority to use nuclear weapons if there has not been an attack. We are the most powerful military in the world, Air Force, Navy, Army. If there's a threat that is conventional, then we have a conventional response. But if nuclear weapons are used, I think that there has to be a process by which the United States Congress is consulted. This is not something, in my opinion, which is any longer hypothetical. I think it's something that President Trump contemplates, although I will add that we introduced the legislation when Hillary Clinton was ahead by 7 points last September. So it has to do more with whether or not any president should have this authority unfettered. What would be the process right now to use nuclear weapons? What would the president have to go through? Could you walk us through what that consultation would have to be?
We'll walk that through in another hearing, if it's okay.
fine.
And just for what it's worth, we've had, I know that you have asked about this, and I appreciate that. Other members have asked the same. We've met with CRS and understand that there hasn't been a hearing on this topic through them, that it could be incorrect, since the 1970s. And so we do plan to have a hearing to walk through how the process works. You know, there's multiple scenarios that come into play, and I think a full hearing would be much better than a 1-minute response.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.